Hi everyone, it's Peter Schiff. This is Friday, March 20th, 2010. Well, I wanted to do this video blog today on Saturday to speak about some of the comments that I happened to hear during the week from former Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan and current Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke. You know, first of all, with respect to Alan Greenspan, when I wrote the book Crash Proof, in there I wrote that Alan Greenspan was the worst Fed chairman we've ever had. And I think that was an understatement. He's not just the worst Fed chairman we've ever had. I think he's the worst American we've ever had. You know, it's been over 200 years now. I think it's about time we gave Benedict Arnold a rest. I think in the future, if we want to refer to a traitor, rather than calling him a Benedict Arnold, we should call him an Alan Greenspan, because he is certainly a traitor to everything this country stands for, everything that he at one time believed, and I assume still believes. So he's a traitor to capitalism, to free markets, to the U.S. Constitution, to the American way of life. And I think he may have single-handedly done more damage to our country than any single American in U.S. history. You know, he continues to talk about the financial crisis of 2008 as if it was a failure of regulation. He's absolving himself in the Federal Reserve from any culpability in the housing bubble. Instead, he's saying we didn't have enough regulation. It was too much capitalism. We need more government regulators, and that's why we had a problem. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, imagine Alan Greenspan is the bartender. He is liquoring up everybody in the tavern, and before the inebriated patrons leave the saloon, he's making sure that they each do a couple of shots for the road. And then, when they get into traffic accidents, he's blaming it on a failure of the police to do their jobs. Oh, and by the way, the police were in the bar, and Greenspan liquored them up too. The whole thing is ridiculous. Now, in his comments, one of the things that he said in this interview was that he said that low interest rates were a contributing factor to the housing bubble, but not the short-term interest rates that the Fed controlled, but long-term interest rates. He said the Fed was raising interest rates, but long-term interest rates, for some crazy reason, stayed low, and that is what fueled the housing bubble. It was low long-term interest rates. Well, again, Alan Greenspan is wrong once again. It was not about long-term interest rates. Long-term interest rates is what set the rates on 30-year fixed-rate mortgages. Those were not the mortgages that were the problem. In fact, Greenspan himself acknowledged that the problem was that too many people were using ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages, and interest-only mortgages. Well, the reason they were doing that was because he kept interest rates so low. That's what made those mortgages so attractive. That's why so many people used them. In fact, the more expensive the house, the more likely it was that people were using ARMs, because that was the only way to afford it. It was the Fed and the low short-term interest rates that fed the housing bubble. That was what made it all possible. That's what gave birth to the subprime market, the teaser rate, interest-only, negative AM, all the types of loans that Alan Greenspan now admits caused the problem were only possible because of the low interest rates courtesy of Alan Greenspan, and now he absolves himself and the institution of the Fed of any responsibility. Now, I'm not just saying this stuff. I am going to read to you guys from my website at schiffforsenate.com. These are some of the, not Schiff for Senate, excuse me, at Europac.net. Europac.net is my corporate website, and if you go there and you go on the right column and you click under Commentary Archives, you can see all the commentaries I was writing. Let me read to you what I was writing real time. This is from February 25th, 2004, titled There He Goes Again. This week, the chairman was true to form, meaning Alan Greenspan, as he continued misleading the public with respect to the enormous risks facing the U.S. economy. Rather than expressing an obvious concern over the increasing use of adjustable rate mortgages, he instead praised them, encouraged greater use, and expressed regret that too many homeowners were wasting money on fixed-rate mortgages. These comments are even more peculiar given the concerns he expressed the following day over the mortgages insured by Freddie and Fannie, as ARMs have a much greater default risk than do traditional fixed-rate mortgages. Rather than reflecting the sophistication on the part of savvy American homeowners, as Greenspan suggests, the reality is that most homeowners are choosing ARMs because that is either the only way they can afford to buy a home or it's the only way they can afford to make ends meet. The average ARM is 50% larger than the average fixed-rate mortgage, suggesting that the larger the mortgage, the more likely is the borrower needs the lower payments to qualify. I believe Greenspan comments are specifically designed to help keep the housing bubble and, by extension, the U.S. economy expanding. Greenspan knows that the only way homeowners can afford these ridiculously high prices is with ARMs. Without them, housing prices would collapse. He also knows how important refi money is to the U.S. consumer. Since long-term interest rates cannot fall low enough to facilitate another wave of fixed-rate refis, he is trying to encourage homeowners to refinance one last time, fixed to ARM. The reality is that such an absurd comments by Greenspan further reveal that his statements are more propaganda than sincere expression of opinion. He says whatever he thinks he has to say to sustain the economic bubble, regardless of his personal beliefs. Everything he says is designed to postpone the day of reckoning as long as possible, no matter how much worse the day will become as a result. It is only when viewed through this perspective do Greenspan's comments make sense. Then I wrote on May 7th, 2004, in an article, In Arm's Way, The Tender Trap of Adjustable Rate Mortgages, that so many are currently opting for ARMs reflects a level of real estate speculation unparalleled in American history. Home buyers have been lured into this foolish choice by real estate and mortgage brokers eager to earn commissions, their own avarice in pursuit of easy riches, and by a Fed chairman desperate to keep the real estate bubble inflating. Unfortunately, the longer the Fed remains patient with regard to raising short-term interest rates to appropriate levels, the more homeowners that will be lured into the ARM time bomb. The real losers in this whole fiasco are likely to be those who do not even participate in the mania. As over-leveraged borrowers walk away from properties in which they have no equity, the Fed will most likely attempt to bail out both debtors and bank depositors, and the government-sponsored enterprises that insured the loans, with the most inflationary monetary policy ever undertaken in the history of central banking. The savings of an entire generation will be wiped out as it will be squandered to perpetuate the biggest real estate and consumer debt bubbles of all time. Remember, I'm talking about these bailouts or writing about them in 2004. Here, from June 23rd of 2004, I wrote, compelling evidence of a potential peak in the housing market was recently provided by the New York Federal Reserve, which yesterday released a study concluding that, quote, there is little evidence to support the existence of a national home price bubble, and that a potential regional decline in house prices would not pose a threat to the overall U.S. economy. They have got to be kidding. However, given the Fed's recent myopia for detecting inflation, it should not be surprising that their vision is similarly impaired when it comes to recognizing the clear signs of a housing bubble. Now, if you want to read all the stuff that I was writing back in 2004, 5, and 6, go to my website. I'll give you some dates of some articles to read in the archives. February 25th, May 7th, June 23rd, and October 14th. In 2005, read the articles from April 20th, July 5th, and June 18th. And for 2006, read the articles from April 21st, June 23rd, August 25th, October 27th, and December 22nd. Also, Ben Bernanke, in an interview, also absolved the Fed, saying that the Fed did not keep interest rates too low for too long. I think this was in an exchange with Ron Paul in front of the House Banking Committee. He said there's no evidence that we kept rates too low. There's no evidence that the low interest rates facilitated the housing bubble. Again, what is he blind? There is ample evidence, and I was speaking about it and writing about it back in 2004, back in 2005, when the Fed still had plenty of time to do something about it. And another crazy statement that Bernanke made, he said that the Fed needs to keep interest rates low to stimulate demand to get the economy going. That is not how you get the economy going. You don't create demand by printing money or keeping interest rates low. The way you stimulate an economy is by increasing supply. It's supply that creates demand. Just, cheap money, absent an increased supply, all that gives you is inflation. And that's all we're going to get. And yeah, it might not happen right away. It might take a few years. Just like my forecast on the housing bubble back in 2004 and 2005, it took a few years before my predictions came true, but they finally did come true in spades. Anyway, that's it for everybody today. Take care, and I will be back again next week from California.